Previously on the Fan of History, BC Adad-Nirari V of Assyria crushed Babylon into anarchy and nobody wanted to be king of Babylon. Assyria's western territories by the Mediterranean have been neglected for 17 years, and in the north the power of Urartu, Proto-Armenia, is ever increasing. Welcome to the Fan of History. I am the Fan of History, and I'm going to talk to you about the years 809 to 806 BC. You should watch the Great Civilizations of the World in 900 BC. And yes, I will make a Great Civilizations of the World in 800 BC, and I think I can make that a lot more in detail, because we know more than we did in 900. But if I make a mistake in this video, please correct me and tell me your sources so I can learn more. And that especially applies to Egypt, because Egypt is super confusing at this time. So, Adad-Nirari III is the king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Assyria is the strongest state in the Near East, but Urartu to the north is a close second. Adad-Nirari is the sixth king of the empire, and his mother, Queen Semiramis or Shamuramat, did not rule the empire as a regent, despite what your reading said. She did not. That's a misunderstanding. So the vassal states are, especially in the west, are all looking to avoid the heavy tribute of the Assyrians. Adad-Nirari is a complicated king for the empire. He's a warrior king. He campaigned almost every year like a good king of Assyria should. But we only have documentations for the western campaigns, and that's probably just due to the chance of discovery, that we just haven't found any sources for the other campaigns. So this is the situation of the empire. Till Barsip, you see on the river there in the middle left, everything west of there is tentatively under Assyrian control, and they haven't really been there for a long time. But this, in 809, Adad-Nirari III attacks the Medes. They are later based around the city of Ekbatana that you can see to the right. They are definitely south of Manneans, and they are very close to the Assyrian border and the Assyrian fortresses in the old kingdom of Samua. This could just be horse-stealing raids, because the Medes are good at getting horses. And the Medes are quite plentiful. We will see in about 50 years, we will hear a number of 65,000 Median warriors, but that's a later story. And the Median Empire is still far in the future. In 808 BC, King Yuan of Zhou China has to intervene in the provinces of Lu, Wey and Qi, because the power of the Zhou monarchy is slipping, and the nobles are fighting each other for control of their territories. So King Yuan is working hard. The X is probably the real interpretation of his name. You could also interpret it with Y. He's working hard, but the Zhou state's control is weakening. And as you see, the bell is tolling for the Western Zhou dynasty that will end in 771 BC. In 808 BC, Adad-Nirari III attacks Guzanu, and this caused me quite a bit of problems, because Guzan, you can see it exactly in the middle of the map of the empire, has been under control of the empire ever since the days of Ashurnasirpal II, even maybe during the days of Tukulti-Ninurta. So it's in the middle of the empire. So it must have been a rebellion, perhaps. I don't know anything more about that. Your theory is as good as mine. Tell me what you think happened in Guzan. This city is famous later because it will be a location where a lot of Jews are deported to later. In 808 BC, Menua of Urartu, king of Urartu, he served as a co-regent under his father a long time, and now he makes his son Inushpua the co-regent of Urartu. And this probably happens during this decade. There are 4 monuments of Urartu mentioning Inushpua. the Assyrians don't mention either of them. They don't talk about Menua, probably because they made no headway against Urartu during the age of Menua. But for some reason Inushpua dies and does not succeed his father. We don't know why. But Menua is still growing Urartu strong. He is conquering to the north, he is doing reforms, he's fighting the Manneans over Lake Urmia, and they're having a great time in Urartu. I promised you I would talk a bit about religion in Urartu, and during the age of Menua, Haldi is made the prime god, whereas the sun god Shivini, the traditional god of Urartu, is moved down to the number 2 spot on called gods. And Haldi is so much like Ashur, the god of war of Assyria, that it's strange. He orders the king to campaign every year. He's the god of war, etc. And the Urartians are known for adapting foreign gods. But one feature of Haldi, as opposed to Ashur, is the house of weapons. The temple of Haldi is filled with weapons. It's like a big room filled with weapons. And Menua structures the Urartian religion, and he acknowledges 69 gods and make a list of them. Most of them are unknown from other cultures, so when the Urartians take other gods, they often change name and change something about them. So these people don't claim copyright. But they will not adopt the gods of the Northerners. The people to the north of Urartu are stupid in the eyes of the Urartians. They don't care much about their barbarian culture. And the people north of Urartu, they are always saying, hey, what about these horsemen on the steppes? What about this army? It's enormous. What are you gonna do? But the Urartian just say, stupid Northerners, we're not listening to you. In 807 BC, Adad-Nirari III attacks the Manneans. They are then exactly north of the Medes. They are southeast of Lake Umbria. You can see Lake Umbria close to Musasir on this map. But we don't know any details about this campaign. And the Manneans are probably under pressure from Urartu. They are under pressure from Urartu, from the Assyrians, but they are still growing their kingdom strong as well. So this pressure of Adad-Nirari III doesn't do anything. So he seems quite weak. The relationship between the Manneans and the Medes is difficult, but I read that it is likely that the Manneans control the Medes, and the Medes are actually vassals of the Manneans. In 806 BC, Adad-Nirari just attacks the Manneans again, and here you see a better map of Mana. Tushpa is the capital of Urartu, and Miandoba then is very, very close to Urartu. Babylonia is in disarray. We don't have any sources from this period. One source mentioned there were 5 kings between 811 and 800 BC, but their names are not known. And I think it's quite likely that Adad-Nirari III himself, with a pretty good claim on the Babylonian throne from his mother's side, could be one of these kings. But if he was, he is losing control over Babylonia during this decade. It is possible that Babylonia at some point also was a vassal state of Assyria. And I don't know, nobody knows why Assyria loses control of Babylonia. The Chaldeans are around, keeping much to themselves in the marches to the south of Ur. The Kassites are around in the Zagros mountains, also staying to themselves. The Arameans, who have settled down in the countryside and obey the kings of Babylon, are now no longer doing that, so they are independent tribes in the middle of the country. In 800 BC, there is a king with a partially preserved name called Ninurta Apla X, but nobody knows anything about him, except the important fact that he, and no king before him, has been a Chaldean. Well, we can't avoid Egypt. The ancient kingdom is in chaos, but it's better off than Babylonia. So we have 3 pharaohs to start with. We have Pedebas I, who rules Thebes and the Western Oasis. We have Takelot II, who wants to rule Thebes, but he rules part of Middle Egypt and Southern Egypt. We have Sheshonq III, one of the longest ruling pharaohs of the third intermediate period. He rules in the north from Tanis, and Sheshonq III is being disobeyed by several great chiefs of the Ma. Every one of these pharaohs is a Libyan, and the Libyans control Egypt, but they do it as Egyptians. They are pretty much Egyptians at this point, because they have totally adopted the culture of the Egyptians. And we have this guy called Osorkon III, who is our man on the ground. And here he is, pushing his little cart. So he is the son of Takelot II. Or is he? He is a high priest of Amun for Takelot II. Or is he? Everything is contested. And that's partially because Osorkon III and Osorkon B, the high priest of Amun for Takelot II, is considered to be the same person. And I have assumed that, and I have talked about them as being the same person. Osorkon B is the one who writes. And it's now come to my attention that this is contested, and many people think that Osorkon III and Osorkon B are not the same person. And that sort of wrecks my poor narrative totally, but I'm going to assume that they were the same person. There is a civil war in the south over control of Thebes for this entire decade. Osorkon B has a brother called Bakem Ptah, who is a general of his forces. I have not found the full text of Osorkon B's chronicle yet, so if anyone can point me in that direction, please do. So these are the events in Egypt of this era. So in the north we have the Delta. That's where Shoshenq III and the great chiefs of the Ma rule. So in the western Delta, it's under the power of the great chiefs of the Ma, and the eastern Delta is under the power of the long-reigning pharaoh Shoshenq III. Osorkon III and his father Takelot II is in Heracleopolis. You can see, if you go south from the Nile, south of Memphis. Memphis is still loyal to Sheshonq III by a marriage alliance. And it's if you go further south, then you found Thebes, from where Pedibus I rules. At some point in this decade, Takelot II dies, so Osorkon III becomes the pharaoh of something, and he inherits Takelot II's claim to Thebes. It is possible then that Pedibus actually made Osorkon III a high priest of Thebes, but if he did, he fired him. And if Osorkon III and Osorkon B are separate people, just Osorkon B was fired as the high priest. But there is a recorded complaint here in the chronicles Osorkon. No one in authority came to help me. I was alone and without a friend. I feel like that when I talk about Egypt sometimes, because this time is so confusing in Egyptian history. But there is still Pi, and Pi will save us. Meanwhile, in India, Panchala is the major Aryan kingdom. These are Vedic times, and there is an interesting person in India who is it's contested when he was around, but he was probably around in 800 BC. He is Bauhayana. He writes the Bauhadyan Sutras. They cover Dharma, daily ritual, Vedic sacrifices, and more religious stuff. But he was also a mathematician, and quite a good one actually. He is the first Indian mathematician credited with coming up with the Pythagorean theorem. That's quite a few years before Pythagoras himself. But he doesn't really complete it, and it's completed by later Indian mathematicians. He can also find a circle with the same area as a square, and he can get the square root of 2, and his method is correct to 5 decimals. This is also the age of the first of the Upanishads. So I started reading about the Upanishads, and I was quite impressed. This is very important Vedic text. There are some concepts in them that appear again in Hinduism. We are still not in the era of Hinduism. We are in the era of the Vedic religion. But the concepts of the Upanishads also apply to Buddhism and Jainism. And if you don't know what Jainism is, I'm gonna tell you when we get to the 6th century BC, because Jainism will become extremely important in India. The Upanishads are extremely hard to date, of course. They are written during a long period. I read 600 BC as well. There are more than 200 known Upanishads, and they are among the most important texts in Hinduism today. There is still no written language in India, which complicates everything for us. In Peru, they don't have written language either, but they do have the amazing Chavin culture, which High Point is still in the far future. The random fact of this week is that they don't have a written language. And that sucks for us, because we want to know more about them. But the only thing we know is their jaguar fascination, their great metal work, and their drug habits. In Mexico, La Venta is the great religious center of the Olmecs. This week we'll talk about the Olmec diet. They're eating fish, not fish, turtles, snakes, crabs, shellfish, birds, and certain game. But they have a much bigger protein source. They have a favorite dish that they eat all the time. We'll talk about that next time. Next time they will also make an archaeological invention, which you might have heard of before. This is also the age of the first Maya statelet. The Maya have been around for a long time in the Yucatan, and they have been living in awe of the Olmecs. But this time they moved down to, or they might have been around there too, down to the Pacific coastal region. So if you look at the Yucatan right to the right of the Olmec civilization thing, and then you go down to the Pacific coast, that's where you can find La Blanca, the first Mayan statelet. And it's possibly quite heavily influenced by the Olmecs. So next time we're gonna talk about the events of 805 to 800 BC. And you will meet Shamshi Ilu, an Aramean, who will become the most powerful man in Assyria. And this guy will be more powerful than 3 kings of Assyria. And next time, the Assyrian royal army will finally return to the west to restore order in Syria. Please discuss the show with me on YouTube or on Facebook. Check out our webpage at thefanofhistory.wordpress.com, and subscribe, like, and share these YouTube videos, because that keeps me motivated. And right now I think I will go beyond 800 BC, but that was my original plan. But this is a lot of fun, so I might just proceed. But please tell me that you like me and what I'm doing, because that helps. Thank you for watching.